The rain pounded the streets, washing the city in a cold, unforgiving glow. Marcus, a weary rideshare driver, had just finished a 14-hour shift. His car was low on gas, his stomach was empty, and his wallet, well, it was nearly empty. As he waited at a red light, he saw a man shivering on the curb. His clothes were tattered, his face covered in grime, and his eyes, well, they held a story Marcus couldn't read. Without thinking, Marcus reached into his wallet and handed the man his last dollar. The man's eyes widened, a soft "thank you" whispered before he disappeared into the night. Marcus drove off, feeling a fleeting warmth, but also a sharp pang of worry. How would he get home? How would he eat tonight? Yet in that moment, the world felt a little lighter. Marcus Thompson had been driving for over 14 hours straight, and the city felt like it was closing in on him. The streets of Atlanta at night were slick with rain, neon reflections rippling on the asphalt like tiny rivers of color. His body ached, his eyes burned from the glare of streetlights bouncing off wet windshields, and his stomach growled in protest. He hadn't eaten since a quick coffee and a granola bar at lunchtime, hours ago. Every mile he drove seemed to pull him further from home, yet he had to keep going. Being a rideshare driver wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. For Marcus, it wasn't just about the money, it was about survival. Supporting his mother, who had retired early due to a chronic illness, was his primary responsibility. She often reminded him to be cautious with his spending, but she also encouraged him to stay kind. Even when the world feels against you, Marcus, she'd say, your character is what makes the difference. Tonight, though, kindness felt like a luxury. His car's gas tank was almost empty, the low fuel light blinking insistently on the dashboard. He had barely enough money to fill it, let alone grab a meal. He ran his hand over the worn leather steering wheel, noticing the small cracks forming over time. A reflection, perhaps, of his own fatigue. He was at a red light when he saw him. A man crouched near the curb, shivering violently in a tattered coat. His shoes were worn through, exposing pale, soaked socks to the rain. Marcus's first thought was that he was just another unfortunate soul in a city that rarely cared. The man's face was streaked with dirt, but it was his eyes that caught Marcus off guard, large, expressive, and filled with a mixture of despair and something else he couldn't place. Marcus hesitated. His wallet was nearly empty. Every dollar counted, but then something stirred inside him. A memory of his mother's voice, of her constant reminders that people matter more than money, flickered in his mind. He reached into his wallet and pulled out his last dollar bill. "Here," he said, rolling down the window and offering it to the man. The man blinked, startled. Then, with a soft, almost reverent "thank you," he took it and vanished into the night. Marcus watched him go, a strange combination of relief and worry tightening in his chest. He had given away the last thing he had. How would he get home? How would he eat tonight? But for a fleeting moment, the world felt a little lighter. Marcus pulled away from the curb, shaking his head as if to shake off the lingering image of the man. The streets were mostly empty now, save for the occasional car splashing through puddles. He accepted another ride request, hoping it would at least cover enough for a quick meal. The app's voice chimed softly. "Pick up at 14th and Maple." The area was unfamiliar. Old brick buildings lined the streets, their windows dark and shuttered. A few street lamps flickered, casting long shadows that stretched and twisted across the wet pavement. Marcus parked, checking the rearview mirror. The passenger, a man in his early 40s, impeccably dressed in a dark suit and polished shoes, stepped into the car. "Evening," Marcus said, his voice hoarse from hours of speaking to strangers. "Good evening," the man replied, his tone calm, almost unnervingly so. He didn't give his name, and Marcus didn't press. Most passengers preferred privacy, especially late at night. The ride was quiet. Marcus focused on the road, the rain streaking down the windshield, illuminated by the occasional passing headlights. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The man in the back seat seemed different. His presence carried an intensity that Marcus couldn't quite identify. Marcus tried to focus on the familiar rhythm of driving, the turns, the stops, the soft hum of the engine. But the memory of the homeless man lingered in the corners of his mind. What was it about his eyes? There was something familiar, yet impossible to place. He tried to dismiss it, blaming exhaustion, but it gnawed at him. The man's voice broke the silence suddenly. "You gave someone $1 tonight, didn't you?" Marcus froze. Yeah. How did you—" "I saw you," the man said simply. "The way you didn't hesitate, even though you didn't have much yourself. That's rare. Very rare." Marcus's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I try to help when I can," he said, a little defensively. "But you don't know how hard it is sometimes. Every dollar matters." The man in the back seat nodded, as if understanding completely. "It does. That's why your act meant more than you realize. There are people watching, Marcus. Moments that define us, even if we think they go unnoticed." Marcus glanced at the rearview mirror, studying the man's face. There was a faint smile, a quiet authority, and an intensity that made Marcus uneasy. He wanted to ask who he was, why he seemed to know so much, but he didn't. Instead, he focused on the road, driving in silence until the man finally said, "Leave your car at the corner of 22nd and Pine in 30 minutes. "You need to see this," Marcus blinked, taken aback. I don't understand." "What is this?" "You'll see," the man said, his voice calm but firm. "Trust me," Marcus's heart pounded. Part of him wanted to dismiss it as a prank. Another part felt a strange pull, a curiosity he couldn't ignore. 30 minutes later, he found himself parked at the designated corner, the rain easing into a light drizzle. The streets were quiet, almost too quiet, and the city felt suspended in time. Then, from the shadows, the man from earlier, the one he had given his last $1 to, stepped forward. But this wasn't the same man. His tattered coat had been replaced with an expensive overcoat. His hair was neatly combed, his shoes polished. Marcus blinked, unable to reconcile the image in front of him with the man on the curb just hours ago. "Marcus," the man said, his voice calm and even. "Do you remember me?" Marcus's mouth went dry. You're the man I gave my last $1 to," the man smiled. "Yes, and because of that small act of kindness, I know the kind of person you are." Marcus shook his head, disbelief written across his face. "But I don't understand. You weren't homeless." "No," the man said. "I was testing you. I needed to know if you would help, even when it cost you something. You did without hesitation. That tells me more about your character than anything else could." He handed Marcus an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. Marcus stared at it, stunned. What? This is for me?" The man nodded. "Consider it an opportunity. I'm launching a foundation to support drivers, people struggling to make ends meet, just like you. And I want you to be part of it." Your generosity didn't go unnoticed. It didn't just change your night, it can change many lives." Marcus could barely speak. His mind raced, recalling the struggles, the exhaustion, the endless hours behind the wheel. Every dollar he had given away, every sacrifice, had led to this moment. The man's eyes held a quiet intensity. "Remember, Marcus, kindness isn't about how much you give. It's about what it reveals about who you are. And tonight, it revealed that you're someone worth investing in." Marcus felt a mixture of awe and gratitude. The streets that had seemed cold and uninviting just hours ago now felt full of possibility. He realized that sometimes even the smallest acts, giving a single $1, showing compassion, could ripple outward, changing lives in ways he couldn't have imagined. As the man disappeared into the night, Marcus clutched the envelope, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. He walked to his car, feeling a strange lightness in his chest. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, character, and the unseen threads connecting people in the most unexpected ways. For Marcus, life behind the wheel would never feel the same. He had learned that even in a city filled with strangers, moments of genuine kindness could change everything. And he knew deep down that this was only the beginning. Marcus stood under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, gripping the envelope tightly, the weight of its contents pressing against his chest more than the paper itself. The man, the homeless man turned benefactor, had vanished into the shadows as mysteriously as he had appeared. The city around him seemed quieter now, almost expectant, as if it were holding its breath for what would come next. Marcus's mind raced. $50,000. His first reaction was disbelief. How could a single act of kindness, a dollar given out of sheer empathy, lead to something so monumental? It seemed unreal. Yet, the envelope in his hand was tangible, crisp, and real. He slid the check back in the envelope and tucked it into his jacket pocket, hesitant to fully believe it. The rain had stopped, leaving a thin mist hovering above the asphalt, illuminated by the occasional glow of streetlights. The world smelled of wet concrete and earth, a strangely calming scent amidst the chaos of Marcus's emotions. He decided he had to process this alone, and started walking. His steps echoed softly in the empty street, each tap of his shoes on the pavement a metronome to the chaos in his mind. As he walked, he noticed something peculiar. The city itself felt different. Normally, even late at night, Atlanta's streets hummed with distant traffic, honking, music from cars driving by. But tonight, there was a stillness, a quietness that pressed in on him. Every shadow seemed elongated, every corner suspicious. Marcus couldn't shake the sensation that someone was watching him. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was just the adrenaline, the disbelief. He had been a driver long enough to know that the city was full of surprises, but this was different. He felt like he had been pulled into a story much larger than himself. Marcus reached the bridge that spanned the downtown district. From here, he could see the city lights reflecting on the water below, a cascade of gold, green, and red. He paused, letting the sight calm him, his mind still churning. He replayed the night in fragments. The rain, the man shivering on the curb, the hesitant hand that reached into his wallet, the soft "thank you," the mysterious envelope, and the now absent benefactor. It all felt like a dream, yet the envelope weighed heavily in his pocket, a weight heavier than any he had carried before. He decided he needed answers. The man had mentioned a foundation, an opportunity to help other struggling drivers like him. But why him? Why now? Marcus had seen many people, many faces on the streets over the years. Some were genuine, some deceitful, some simply lost. What was different about this man? The following day, Marcus couldn't sleep. His body craved rest, but his mind refused. He kept picturing the man's eyes, sharp, intelligent, and almost piercing in their gaze. It was as though the man had seen Marcus's very soul in that brief encounter on the curb. Every detail replayed in his mind, down to the crease of the man's coat, the faint scent of cologne lingering even in the damp night air, the way he spoke with quiet authority. By mid-morning, Marcus decided he had to return to the street where the encounter had occurred. He felt an odd pull, an instinct that told him this wasn't just a random act of fortune, but the beginning of something significant. When he arrived, the streets were bustling now, filled with the typical chaos of a weekday morning. Cars honking, commuters rushing, coffee shops buzzing. Yet the memory of last night's stillness remained vivid in his mind. Marcus walked slowly, retracing the route he had taken, hoping, perhaps irrationally, that the man would reappear. Hours passed. There was no sign of him. No one even seemed to notice Marcus lingering, staring down corners and alleys, as if the city itself was indifferent to the story that had unfolded only hours ago. Frustrated and weary, Marcus decided to return home, clutching the envelope tightly. Over the next few days, life seemed to resume its normal rhythm. He picked up rides, listened to passengers' stories, and tried to push the memory of that rainy night into the back of his mind. But every so often, something would trigger a memory, the way a child laughed on the street, the glimpse of a man wearing a coat similar to the one the benefactor had worn, the sight of a shivering figure near a curb. Each time, Marcus's heart would skip a beat. Then came the phone call. "Marcus Thompson?" A calm, deep voice said on the other end. "Yes, this is Marcus," he replied cautiously, unsure what to expect. "This is Jonathan Pierce. We spoke last week." The name startled him. "Jonathan Pierce?" Marcus's mind raced. Could it be him? The man? Yes. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time, the voice continued. I wanted to talk about your involvement in the foundation. Marcus froze, realizing this was the opportunity he had sensed. Yes. I'm listening. The man explained the foundation in detail. A charitable initiative aimed at helping drivers and other struggling individuals achieve financial stability. Your story inspired us, Marcus, Jonathan said. Your willingness to give, even when you had nothing, is exactly the kind of spirit we want to highlight. We want you to help guide the foundation's work and be a face for the community we're trying to build. Marcus's mind reeled. He had never imagined that giving $1 could lead to a responsibility like this, a chance to truly make a difference. But with it came a new set of fears. Could he handle this? Was he ready for such visibility? And more importantly, why him? The next weeks were a whirlwind. Marcus began attending meetings, working alongside Jonathan and a team of coordinators who explained how the foundation would operate. He met other drivers and struggling individuals whose stories mirrored his own. He realized that for many the system had failed them. Jobs were scarce, opportunities even scarcer, and yet people persisted, trying to carve out a life for themselves. One day Marcus found himself back at the corner where he had given the $1. He watched people pass by, some hurrying, some lingering, many oblivious to the struggles around them. He felt a wave of empathy, thinking of the countless faces he had seen over the years, the homeless, the desperate, the lost. Each one had a story, each one mattered, and for the first time he understood that one small act, one single gesture, could trigger change far beyond what anyone could predict. Then came a surprise visit. Jonathan had asked Marcus to meet a man he described as someone important to the foundation's future. When Marcus arrived, he realized it was the same man, the one he had given his last $1 to. But now, dressed impeccably, the man radiated authority and calm, yet there was a softness in his eyes that belied the power he held. "Marcus," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Thank you for trusting in humanity, even when it was hard. That single act told me everything I needed to know about you. People like you are rare." Marcus shook his hand, feeling a strange mix of humility and pride. "I just did what I could," he replied, unsure of what else to say. The man smiled. "And that's exactly why we need you, not just for the foundation, but to show others that giving, even when you think you have nothing, can change everything." Over the next few days, Marcus became immersed in his new role. He was learning to manage responsibilities he had never imagined, mentoring others, sharing his story, and witnessing the profound impact his journey could have on people facing similar struggles. He began to understand that kindness wasn't measured by the size of the gift, but by the courage it took to give when it mattered most. Yet even as he embraced this new chapter, a quiet question lingered. Why was the man really testing him? Was it merely to find someone worthy, or was there something deeper at play? The uncertainty gnawed at him, creating a tension that refused to subside. Marcus's nights became restless. He would often find himself replaying the events, the rain, the $1, the look in the man's eyes, the mysterious envelope. Each detail seemed imbued with layers of meaning he couldn't fully decipher. It was as if the encounter was part of a larger puzzle, one he had yet to solve. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Marcus returned home to find a small package waiting on his doorstep. Inside was a photograph, a snapshot of him handing the $1 to the man, taken from an angle that suggested someone had been observing all along. There was a note attached. "Some acts echo further than we realize. Keep your heart open." Marcus stared at the photograph, a shiver running down his spine. He realized that his life had irrevocably changed. That one night, $1, had set off a chain of events far beyond his comprehension. And as he looked out at the city lights, he understood one truth. Kindness had a power he had only just begun to understand. The rain had returned, A gentle drizzle coated the city in a reflective sheen, turning the streetlights into halos that shimmered across the asphalt. Marcus gripped the steering wheel of his car, parked near 22nd and Pine, the corner where it had all begun. His heart raced, a mix of anticipation, disbelief, and an inexplicable tension that refused to dissipate. He had been summoned again, this time by Jonathan Pierce, the man whose identity had haunted his thoughts ever since that night. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the envelope in his jacket pocket. The $50,000 check that had changed his life, and the photograph reminding him that someone had been watching all along. Everything had led to this moment. He stepped out of the car, boots splashing through puddles, and scanned the street. Then he saw him. The homeless man, no, the benefactor, stood beneath a flickering street lamp. His expensive coat gleamed even in the dim light, and his eyes held the same piercing intensity Marcus remembered. But there was something different. Now, a calm authority, a presence that radiated power and purpose. "Marcus," the man said, his voice steady, almost commanding. "It's time you understood the truth." Marcus's stomach tightened. "Truth? About what?" The man took a step closer, the rain lightly splattering on his coat. "About who I am. About why I was there that night. About why I chose you." Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine. "You're not homeless, I know that now, but why the act? Why the test?" The man nodded slowly. "Yes, I was not homeless. That night was a test, but not in the way you think. I wasn't testing your generosity merely to see if you were kind. I needed to see how you would act under real pressure. Life often presents moments where the right choice is difficult, and I wanted to see if you would act with integrity, even when it cost you dearly." Marcus swallowed hard. "Integrity? Even when I had nothing left?" "Exactly," the man said. "You didn't hesitate. You gave your last dollar, not because I demanded it, not because anyone would reward you, but because your heart told you it was right. That is rare, Marcus. That is extraordinary." Marcus felt the tension in his chest release slightly, replaced by a swirl of emotions. Pride, disbelief, gratitude, and something else he couldn't name. "But how did you—" "Why me?" The man smiled, a soft but knowing smile. "Because you have the potential to influence others, to inspire change. That $1, it wasn't just a test of your character. It was the key to unlocking your purpose. That night, you demonstrated what it means to be a true giver in a world that often rewards selfishness." Marcus shook his head, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," the man replied. "Let your actions speak. You've already done more than words could ever capture." Then, he revealed something Marcus hadn't anticipated. "I am launching a foundation, not just to help drivers like you, but to transform lives in communities that have been overlooked, ignored, and underestimated. And I want you to lead a part of this initiative. Your story, your choices, they will guide others, showing them that one act, one decision, can ripple through countless lives." Marcus's mind spun. His journey, from a tired driver with nothing to give, to someone entrusted with a responsibility that could affect hundreds, even thousands, felt surreal. It was more than opportunity. It was validation, purpose, and a call to action wrapped into one. Then came the moment Marcus would never forget. The man handed him a small envelope, different from the check before. Inside was a letter. "Marcus, your life has already changed the world in ways you cannot yet see. Accept this as the beginning, not the end. Your kindness has opened doors that no one else could. Now walk through them." Marcus stared at the letter, reading it again and again, trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. Tears threatened to spill, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that a single act, his last dollar, had transformed the trajectory of his life. The man continued, his voice calm but resonant. "There is one more thing you need to know. That night someone was watching you, someone who has dedicated their life to finding those rare individuals who act with courage and integrity in moments of uncertainty. I am not alone in this. Your generosity was noticed by many, and each of us agrees. You are the right person for this mission. That dollar, your last dollar, was more than money. It was proof of your character. Marcus's hands trembled as he folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. I don't know if I'm ready for all this, he admitted, voice shaking. The man stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. You are ready. You were born ready. Every challenge you faced, every hardship you've endured, led you to this moment. You have already proven yourself. Now it's time to embrace it fully. For the first time that night, Marcus allowed himself to breathe deeply. The rain continued to fall, but it no longer felt cold or harsh. Instead, it seemed to wash over him like a baptism, cleansing away fear and doubt, leaving only clarity, purpose, and resolve. Then came the final revelation, the truth that shook Marcus to his core. The man pulled back slightly and said, Marcus, the dollar you gave, that was never about the money. It was about trust, belief, and heart. And because you acted with all three, the world has now opened a door for you that no one else could have walked through. You have changed your life and countless lives around you. That is the power of integrity, Marcus. Marcus's eyes welled with tears. He felt a mix of emotions, gratitude, awe, and a deep, profound understanding of what it meant to give without expectation. He realized that the world was far more interconnected than he had ever imagined, that a single act, a simple decision could ripple through time, affecting countless lives in ways unseen. He looked at the man, who now seemed almost like a guardian figure, a mentor guiding him into the next chapter of life. Thank you, Marcus whispered. The man smiled. No, Marcus. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us all that hope, generosity, and courage still exist. You are a rare soul. Now go, do not wait. The world is waiting for you. As Marcus walked away, the envelope clutched tightly in his hand. He felt the city around him shift. The streets seemed brighter, the lights warmer, the air charged with possibility. Every puddle, every reflection, every shadow seemed to shimmer with a new significance. That night, Marcus understood something he had never realized before. True generosity is never measured by what you give, but by what you are willing to risk, even when nothing is guaranteed. And in that moment, Marcus knew with certainty that his life, and the lives of countless others, would never be the same. The rain had finally stopped. Morning sunlight peeked through the clouds, casting the city in a warm, golden glow. Marcus stood on the same corner where everything had begun, looking at the streets that had once seemed endless, cold, and indifferent. Now they felt alive, full of possibility, stories, and people waiting for someone to notice them. He thought back to that rainy night, the shivering man on the curb, the last dollar that had seemed so insignificant at the time. That single act of kindness had unlocked something he had never expected. A connection, a purpose, and a responsibility to make a real difference in the world. Marcus had become a key figure in the foundation Jonathan Pierce had created. He now spent his days meeting struggling drivers, mentoring young people in financial literacy, and helping communities build opportunities where none had existed before. His work wasn't easy. There were setbacks, challenges, and moments of doubt. But he faced them with the same integrity and courage that had defined him that night. Every time he recounted his story, people were stunned. A rideshare driver giving his last dollar had led to a chain of events that transformed not just his life, but the lives of countless others. Marcus never took credit for the money or the recognition. He credited the lessons he had learned from his mother, the resilience he had developed through hardship, and the belief that kindness, even in its smallest form, could ripple far beyond what anyone imagined. One afternoon, Marcus visited the corner where he had first met the man. The street was bustling, filled with commuters, cars, and the sounds of daily life. He noticed a young man sitting on the curb, shivering in a thin jacket, looking lost. Marcus approached him, kneeling slightly to offer a warm smile. "Hey," he said gently, "you look like you could use some help." The young man's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and hesitation. Marcus reached into his pocket and handed him a small envelope, money enough for food, a bus ride, and a fresh start. "It's not much," Marcus said, "but it's a start. Sometimes one small gesture can change everything." The young man's face lit up with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, clutching the envelope tightly. Marcus smiled, feeling the same warmth he had felt years ago when he had given his last dollar. That feeling, that spark of human connection, was what made all the hardships worthwhile. He realized that life was full of these moments, opportunities to act, to give, to trust, and to transform. Over the following months, Marcus's work with the foundation expanded. He traveled to different neighborhoods, speaking to groups of drivers, volunteers, and young people, sharing his story of integrity and kindness. He helped create mentorship programs, financial workshops, and community support networks. Each success, no matter how small, reminded him that the ripple effect of a single act of generosity could reach far beyond the immediate moment. One evening, Marcus received a letter from Jonathan Pierce. Inside was a note. "Marcus, you have exceeded every expectation. Your courage, kindness, and dedication continue to inspire. Remember that your journey started with one small act of generosity, the last dollar you gave. Keep paying it forward. The world needs more people like you." Marcus held the note close, his eyes moist with gratitude. He knew that while the foundation had given him an opportunity, it was his choices, his integrity, and his willingness to act that had made the difference. He returned home that night, walking through his neighborhood as the city lights glowed softly in the distance. He passed familiar streets, shops, and faces, feeling a profound sense of belonging and purpose. The hardships of his past, the long hours driving, the financial struggles, the exhaustion, felt like necessary steps that had prepared him for this very moment. As he climbed the steps to his apartment, he paused for a moment and looked back at the street behind him. The city, once daunting and indifferent, now seemed alive with potential. People moved with purpose, yet Marcus understood that behind every face was a story, a struggle, and perhaps an opportunity for someone to make a difference. He knew that life would not always be easy. There would be setbacks, disappointments, and moments when he questioned whether his efforts mattered. But he also knew this: kindness and integrity were powerful. They were transformative, and the ripple effect of one act of giving his last dollar, had changed everything. Marcus smiled to himself, a quiet determination settling in his heart. He would continue to give, to mentor, to inspire, and to act with integrity, no matter the cost. The city streets, full of strangers and stories, were no longer intimidating. They were a canvas, and Marcus was ready to paint them with acts of generosity, courage, and hope. The story of the last dollar, once a symbol of his struggle, had become a beacon of possibility. It was proof that even in a world full of challenges, one person could make a difference. One choice could transform lives. One act of kindness could echo endlessly, and as Marcus closed his eyes that night, he felt a profound sense of peace. He had learned the ultimate lesson. Generosity is not measured by what you have, but by what you are willing to give when it matters most. The last dollar had changed his life, and now he was changing the lives of others. In the quiet of the city night, Marcus knew this truth. Every act of kindness matters. Every decision counts, and the smallest gestures can lead to the greatest transformations.